Welcome to DEMOCREPUBLIX, where we cover the real news that matter to we the people. Taxing the rich at 100% won't come close to paying for socialist agenda, study finds. PJ Media reports that taxing high earners at 100% of their income will pay for about one-third to just over half of the extraordinary, ambitious, progressive, or socialist programs supported by Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. A New Heritage Foundation study found even a full confiscation of all incomes above $200,000 and a confiscation of all corporate profits would still fall $13.2 trillion short of paying for the low estimate for the Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. Quote, it's arithmetically impossible to pay for progressive promises by taxing the rich, David Burton, Heritage Senior Fellow in Economic Policy, wrote in the study. Progressive promises are too expensive, and the amount of income earned by the rich is too small. Even using lower cost estimates, confiscating every dollar earned by every taxpayer with incomes of $200,000 or more would only pay for about half of the progressive agenda. Yet even this estimate is rosy. That figure is based on a false assumption that people would continue to work, save, and invest when subject to 100% flat tax. The reality is progressive promises can only be funded by increasing taxes on the middle class from 3 to 10 times their current level, or for a limited time, by dramatic and unsustainable increases in federal borrowing. I'm going to stop right here for a second and say, I will say, even though I disagree 100% with Sanders' proposals, at least he admit to pay for it, he's going to have to tax the middle class. Warren won't admit that she's going to tax the middle class. Harris, she won't admit that she's going to have to tax the middle class. And AOC, she won't come out and admit to pay for her Green New Deal. She got to tax the middle class. At least Bernie Sanders is coming out and telling the truth and saying that, yeah, I'm going to have to raise taxes on the middle class. But he won't really say how much he's going to have to raise it. But from this study, we know that it's going to he's going to have to raise the taxes 3 to 10 times more than what the middle class is paying right now just to pay for this thing. The article goes on to say that to analyze whether or not taxing the rich could cover the socialist agenda, Heritage first estimated just how much that agenda would cost. According to the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, without any change to current law, America would spend $57 trillion in the next 10 years. About 22%, or $12.4 trillion, will be financed by debt. Single-payer health insurance would increase federal spending by $32 trillion to $33 trillion over the next 10 years. The Green New Deal, jobs guarantee, or universal basic income, government-funded college tuition, and more would cost trillions more. Heritage estimated a 10-year total cost between $48 trillion, close to the PJ Medium analysis at $49 trillion over 10 years, and $92 trillion, close to the American Action Forum estimate of $93 trillion for all programs. And I even read some estimates that comes into the hundreds of trillions. But the article goes on to say that just Medicare for all would increase federal spending by 58%. The low estimate for the Green New Deal suite of socialist programs would increase that spending by 84%. The high estimate of 161%. Like it's unfeasible how they will pay for these programs. I mean, it's no way to pay for all these programs. So what kind of tax increase would be necessary to cover this? Democrats like talking about taxing the rich, but even confiscating 100% of the taxes on both high incomes and corporate profits, both of which would have devastating economic consequences and would de-incentivize hard work and economic growth, leading to decreased revenue over time, will fall far short of the low estimate. That's the thing. Socialist policies, it kills incentive, because why work hard to make these profits and to make money when you know that the government is going to take the money from you anyway. So it flat out kills any incentive to make money. From IRS data, Heritage predicted that 100% flat tax on those with income of 1 million or more would only raise $986 billion per year. This would not even eliminate the annual federal deficit, about 1.1 trillion. This also does not consider federal payroll taxes, Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes, or state and local income, property, and sales taxes, all of which would drive the numbers even lower. Confiscating all after tax income of those making 500,000 or more would increase federal revenues by about 1.4 trillion per year, enough to eliminate the federal deficit, but not much more. Tax confiscation of all incomes of those earning 200,000 or more would add 2.7 trillion to federal revenues, but again, this does not take various other taxes into account. Due to basic economic realities, this would be a one-time revenue increase. This kind of confiscatory tax would drive taxpayers to stop working or otherwise stop pursuing income. Taking state and local income and payroll taxes into account, earning money will cost taxpayers more money since the effective taxes would top 100%. So basically they're saying most middle-class workers would just stop working altogether, because if they work, all of their money is going to be taken for taxes anyway. So why work when you can sit at home all day and just collect a paycheck from the government? Because if you go out and work, you basically you're not going to be making any money. So that's what we mean by saying it kills incentive. It kills incentive to work. It kills incentive for corporations to make more money. So and that's why socialism never works. It never works. You can look at history and see that socialism, once the government have total control over everything, especially the economy, they run it to the ground because it kills incentive. It kills people will to work. But the article goes on to say that even with the entirely fanciful assumption that workers will continue to earn income with federal income tax rates alone at 100%, this enormous tax would not even come close to covering the socialist progressive agenda. The fanciful estimate to $27 trillion in the first 10 years would cover 56.25% of the socialist agenda on the low estimate. This would only cover 29.3% of high estimate. Again, this estimate is based on a fiction that ignores economic reality. But what about corporate profits? Surely confiscating all profits from the massive corporations that Bernie Sanders rails against will do the trick, right? Wrong. Taxing corporate profits would be far from complicated than it may appear. A full 37% of corporate stock is owned by pension plans or retirement accounts. 26% is owned by foreigners, and 5% is owned by tax-exempt organizations. The burden of this tax will likely be borne by U.S. workers, since capital is mobile while labor is not. Even assuming that a corporate profit confiscation tax is possible, and that businesses and investors would continue their operations after such a tax was levied, this tax would only collect $4.6 trillion over 10 years, enough to fund 10% of the low estimate for the socialist agenda and a mere 5% of the higher estimate. Even assuming that corporate profits can be taxed twice, this imaginary tax will raise $7.6 trillion. Again, the estimates for both the 100% income tax for $200,000 plus earners, which is $27 trillion, and a corporate profit confiscation tax of $7.6 trillion rely on Goldilocks-style economics conditions. These estimates assume that tax isn't so harsh as to prevent people from working or investing while still being harsh enough to raise the kind of money required. Taken together, the Goldilocks tax scheme add up to $34.6 trillion, less than 3/4, 72% of the low estimate for the socialist agenda, and barely over a third, 38% of the high estimate. In the absolute best case scenario, taxing the rich still leaves the government short by 13.4 trillion or 57.8 trillion. So, uh, so what do? Tax the middle class, of course. Quote, the only arithmetically possible answer to pay for the progressive agenda is that the progressive agenda must be paid for by radical increases in the tax burden borne by middle income taxpayers or dramatic increases in federal borrowing, Burton wrote. Federal borrowing is already astronomical and unsustainable. Going even further into depth for the socialist progressive agenda will only speed up the day of reckoning. The debt crisis will certainly hit the middle class. So the next time a Democratic presidential candidate promises the moon and says taxing the rich will pay for it, tell them that in even the most impossible Goldilocks tax scenario, all of the taxing in the world would only pay for 72% of the Green New Deal for 10 years. That's not even taking into account the roughly $250,000 cost per household to actually implement the Green New Deal. That means every single household had to pay $250,000 just to pay for this thing. And that's unfeasible. When an expansive government driven by utopian goals and willing to remake society to reach those goals runs into a concrete wall of reality, innocent people suffers as the government tries to break that wall. Meanwhile, the free market system has enabled a kind of prosperity literally unthinkable 100 years ago. America should stick with what works and reject the dangerous path of seeking a government panacea, which I agree is 100% correct. I mean, socialism has never worked in history. If you are even a casual observer of history, you would know that socialism has never worked. So why would you take a system like capitalism, true capitalism, that's been proven to work, that lifted more people out of poverty than any system ever created? Why would you want to throw that away for socialism, for something that has been known to never work? But then when you talk to a socialist, they be like, oh, that's not the socialism we're talking about. We're talking about democratic socialism. The people get the vote. It doesn't matter who gets the vote. I'm talking about the system that's in place. The socialist system that they want to put in place, it doesn't matter who's at the head of it. The system is what drives people in the ground. The system is what ruins everything. But when you try to explain that to a socialist, they don't want to hear it. Because, they don't want to hear anything about facts. They don't want to hear anything about history. They just want to go with their fake utopia. There's no way to be, there's no such thing as a utopia. Because people are inherently not inherently good. You know what I'm saying? So how is there will never ever be a utopia? And capitalist system is the best thing we have to get even close to any type of utopia. But leave your comments down below, especially socialists. I want to hear you guys with how y'all feel about this. But leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out DEMOCREPUBLIX.com for the latest in news. Till next time. We live in a really nightmare. We live in a really nightmare.